Hey there, I'm Brian Ogilvy, and in this video we're going to talk about how the desire for success can destroy you. And I know that's a little bit counterintuitive, but give me a second here to explain what I mean specifically, and I think you'll find that it'll lead to more insights and more success in the long term. Alright, so very quickly as an introduction, my name is Brian Ogilvy, and I'm the author of a book called How to Conquer Yourself, Discipline and Willpower for the Conscious Creative Thinker. If that interests you at all, you can get the book on Amazon or on my site, dotheknowledge.com. Dotheknowledge.com has a ton of videos, audio podcasts, book excerpts, etc. And towards the end of the video, I'll show you how to get 2 chapters of the book for free. Alright, so here's the theme, here's the main point. The typical notion of quote-unquote success as promulgated, as propagated in the self-help industry and the entertainment industry as well, is a pathological outgrowth of Western materialism. It's like a madness that we're conditioned to have. Our fixation with becoming rich and famous, the way in which we value and judge ourselves about how quote-unquote successful we are, is a byproduct of consumerism. It comes from living within the confines of a consumerist society. So here's the question, self-help or self-destruction? It's a question I want you to ask yourself when you look into different books along becoming successful, achieving your dreams, etc. It was the title of a book by Dr. Chris Thurman, subtitled The 10 Pop Psychology Myths That Could Destroy Your Life. Pop psychology means cheap psychology. It means when someone takes a pseudo-psychological notion from the actual academic fields and utilizes it towards their own end, so you can essentially buy into whatever methodology they're selling. There's also another good book called Sham, How the Self-Help Movement Made America Self-Help. SHAM stands for Self-Help and Actualization Movement, and that gets more into the industry, into the technical numbers, and how many people are becoming rich by, promoting their snake oils. Empire of Illusion by Chris Hedges. Chris Hedges is more of a social critic. He was a war reporter, and this is more about America as a whole being an illusion, America as a whole being a matrix. But he has a specific chapter in there called The Illusion of Happiness, which talks about positive psychology. And lastly, the movie Limitless, for a cinematic adaptation of a similar point with Robert De Niro and Bradley Cooper, which talks more so about, thematically and theme, how there's a thin line between the allure of the human potential and also it being a curse. How you got to march that thin line, and if you're not too careful, you can go too fast. So delusions of grandeur, that kind of thing. Lastly, the book Mastery by George Leonard, which is my favorite out of the bunch. He was an Aikido master, the keys to long-term success and fulfillment. And what he talks about in there is how in the West we value success. In Western society, we're concerned with becoming successful, whereas in Eastern tradition they value mastery. In the East they value like a martial artist oriented perspective. Again, he was an Aikido master. In his book he talks about how many martial artists, gurus and masters of the past no longer teach because the trainees are becoming too impatient. They watch a Bruce Lee movie and they think that they can do all types of miraculous things in an instant. Similarly, I did a lecture with Cheryl Wills, a news anchor at NY1, Time Warner's NY1, and in her presentation she said the same thing, that a lot of interns and upcoming news reporters, they have the false notion that if they work hard for a couple of years, like 3 years, they'll be a news anchor, when really it takes more like 20. And across the board you find this same notion. If you talk to anyone who's an expert, anyone who's really successful, our generation specifically, we tend to want success, but we don't necessarily want skill. We want opportunity, but we don't have the discipline to master the craft that opportunity requires and revolves around. Also, my brother, he's a pretty successful accountant, and he once told me that in business, when you plan for an expense, you usually end up spending about twice as much as you would normally allocate. And likewise, when you plan to make money, you usually only make about half what you estimate. So we find this kind of paradigm shifting over into goals as a whole. Generally speaking, if you have a goal, it usually takes you about 3 to 4 times longer than you would naturally expect. When you want to achieve something, usually you only get about a third or a quarter or half of the progress that you naturally would assume you would at the outset. So don't torture yourself. If you're concerned with success, you'll always feel like you're behind. Again, the solution is discipline. It's mastery. Specifically, if you think of your goal as a discipline, as something to develop expertise, craftsmanship, proficiency within, as a sort of martial art in and of itself, you're much more likely to have the discipline and focus and long-term commitment that the goal entails. So I'm using a musician here. I used to play the drums when I was in high school. And when I taught people to play the drums, and also when I learned myself, one of the big problems is we would always be concerned with tricks and visual fancy techniques rather than mastering the rudiments, rather than mastering stick control, tempo, etc. So if you're a student, for example, focus on mastering what's eventually going to become your professional career, not necessarily getting a great GPA or having a cool resume, etc. Likewise, if you're a writer like me, think about mastering prose. Take some type of honor towards your craft, mastering the English language, etc., rather than just having a bestseller or, selling tons of manuscripts, etc. Become so quote unquote nice that you're irreplaceable. Become so good at what you do that you'll be ushered into the front as a matter of fact because people simply need you. I put this book excerpt on Instagram the other day. Discipline begins as a desire for mastery. If you want to attain discipline, you have to shift over from desiring material success into wanting to master whatever your craft is. All right, and lastly, the sense of inadequacy. If you remember from the first slide, I talked about a sense of inadequacy, confusion, and despair. Generally, if you focus merely on material success, you'll always feel behind and underaccomplished. You'll always feel like you don't have what you should, or that something is wrong with you at a deep level for not succeeding. Especially our generation. If you're around my age, we tend to be very narcissistic, self-absorbed, compulsive, and obsessive about being majorly successful early on in our lives, when the reality is, again, you talk to anyone who's experienced, it took them a very long time. All right, and this can lead to overwhelm, meaning that even if you do achieve the success early on, what happens is your life can become like a complex algebraic equation, and it'll be very difficult. You can overwhelm the circuit. You can overwhelm yourself with the obligations that come. DJ Khaled recently released an album called Suffering from Success, and he talked about this, how it's a very elegant skill to be able to handle multiple horizons of obligation, multiple levels of responsibility all at the same time, and have people depending on you, and to be able to keep all of those plates spinning. It's something that you don't want too early on, too prematurely. So again, success is great, but our cultural obsession with success, having an emotional fixation on it, is not. All right, the desire for success is healthy, but thinking that you need success to make yourself valuable or worthwhile, or just that general psychological orientation, that's what you have to question. All right, the self-help and entertainment industry, both of them, specifically self-help because, the field that I'm in, but the entertainment industry as well, it conditions us with this notion of success that's materialistic in nature. It's premature, meaning that it makes us impatient, and it's out of tune. It's antagonistic to what the nature of discipline and the nature of success actually entails. So we're most disciplined, contrarily, when we aim to master a skill, not simply collect a reward. I talk about this in chapter 3 of my book. Think of your goal as a martial art. Right? Be like the Ryu from Street Fighter of whatever your ambition is. All right? Because goals typically take 3 to 4 times longer than estimated. Remember what my brother said about business expenses being twice as much than what you expect. And you don't want to torture yourself. If you're focused only on the end results, you'll be just in despair indefinitely. So here's a book excerpt as a personal analogy. In my life, my most rewarding relationships weren't the ones where I dated the prettiest girl in school to gain popularity, or the relationships I pursued simply for sex, to fill gaps in my self-esteem. My most rewarding relationships were the ones where I genuinely appreciated the girl for who she was as a person. The relationships I wanted for the nature of the woman herself, pursued from a state of respect, and then built a connection over time based upon that. Discipline works in a similar way. Your most rewarding goals, the ones you'll actually be disciplined enough to accomplish, won't be the ones where you'll achieve social status or validation through fame, or the goals you chase simply for money because you're in a desperate spot. Your most rewarding goals will be the ones you genuinely appreciate for the nature of what they entail, the ones you treat as an honorable craft to develop skill and finesse within, and then build proficiency over time based upon that. All right, again, the book is called How to Conquer Yourself. This is the cover. It's available on Amazon, also from my website, dotheknowledge.com. I'll autograph the copy, mail it out to you. It, again, comes with free audio podcasts, videos, etc. All right, now again, if you'd like to read excerpts from the book, here I am with my friend, stand-up comedian Kari Takamura. If you want to read the first 2 chapters just to get a feel for what it contains, simply go to the site in the right sidebar to say enter your email for 2 free chapters now, and I'll send you a PDF. You can breeze through it, get a sense of my style of writing, the techniques, etc. But remember, it's not about self-help, it's about self-control. It's not about becoming successful, it's about attaining discipline. All right, hope this helps. Take care and have a great day.